Hello everyone, this is Bob and Threadbare.
You've seen what Comstock has done to my history. Now see how he's rewritten his own.
And welcome back to BioShock Infinite. It's a good sound system they've got here.
The seed of the prophet lay in the womb of Our Lady but for a single week. Comstock had a child. My books never mention anything about a child.
That's quite an omission. Can't imagine that was by accident.
But the child took ill, and Our Lady prayed for the prophet's heir day and night.
Did she have it while she was on a chariot? That's one hell of a delivery.
That's my tower.
Lo, while Daisy Fitzroy has murdered my beloved, she shall not have the child. She shall not come betwixt her and prophecy.
The seed of the prophet shall sit the throne and drown in flame the mountains of man.
You're Comstock's daughter.
No, I can't be. I can't.
He wants you to follow in his footsteps.
Well, I want a puppy, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna get one.
Search your feelings, you know it to be true.
You want to take a look at this?
Kind of a pointless lock there. Is this section supposed to be, like, blocked off from the rest of the displays? I mean, why have a lock there? Is it like a hidden loading screen to slow you down?
To those who loved me, I was the most generous of souls. There was no pain I would deny them, no betrayal I would not gladly give. And when I had scorched the hearts of all who loved me, the prophet said, "There is nothing you can do for which I will not forgive you. For God has granted me sight, and through his eyes, even you are loved."
I think that's a very poetic way of saying that she was a prostitute before Comstock found her. I mean, maybe not a prostitute, but definitely someone of low moral character. And back in the day, there were only so many occupations a woman could have, sadly enough. Oh, you can see the wires. It's a nice touch. Although, those have to be some pretty damn fine wires to be carrying solid statues like that. Oh wait, no, they don't have to be solid statues. They could just be hollow plaster molds, actually. That'd be clever.
I can get through these bars, but you're too broad. Let me scout ahead, see if there's some way to move forward.
See, now here's where you would expect a lock.
Is that?
It's a tear, something I can bring into this world.
It's a freight hook. Well, that's convenient.
As I said, it's a form of wish fulfillment. There. I feel there's more where that came from. Whenever I'd get anxious, tears have a way of appearing. Booker, do you see those tears? We can use them against Slate's men. That tear will get us access to higher ground. And that one will give us a turret.
And some cover.
Try that one! Turret, now!
So welcome to the primary function of Elizabeth in combat. She has a mechanic that allows her to change the very nature of the battlefield. It's actually a pretty interesting addition to the mechanics. Crap. Of course, I'm not really making use of it that much. But maybe I can change that.
Comstock's pet can do some wonderful tricks. Do you know what you've got there, Booker?
That's enough, Slate. We just need the vigor to get out of Columbia. We're taking it one way or another. Slate!
And actually, I can use those freight hooks to get up to the next floor. To those balconies on either side here. Of course, I think I forget to do that entirely. Murals aren't anything terribly new here. Ah. Luckily, I get to keep the money even after the... Oh, hello.
Much obliged.
Luckily, I get to keep that money, too. Even after that tear closes. I mean, it is an alternate reality. It's just as real on that side.
Keep your eye open for that shock jump.
Ah, nuts. Well, they've got possession for less. So I can do it more than 5 times. Looks like the sign at the front wasn't in good state even back then. No actual pictures of the child were ever taken. Oh wait. Crap. Spoke too soon. What were those hand signals supposed to mean?
Mariner, let the vigor undertow disperse the hated albatross.
To the sky Comstock bent his knee and saw with holy prophecy. And too rare is the man who takes a stand you and I, sweetest fatherland. For here's the place where we revere the heroes of our city.
10 men, Booker. That's what Comstock will turn us into. Wires and gears to replace heads and hearts.
The Lord judges, I act.
Well, that's one way to introduce the game's... Basically, this version, their version of the Big Daddies. Ah, crap.
Booker, the gears!
Yeah, I know, but it's turning too fast. Basically, there's this row of gears in its back. Hitting that deals more damage. It's basically like their head.
You see, Booker? Maybe you're the man I remember. Maybe not. It doesn't matter. Comstock took our stories and scrubbed away our souls. He's coming for me. And when I'm gone, all that will be left is the lie.
Just give us what we came for!
You know this is pointless, then why even do it? gonna convince anybody by killing yourself like this. Taking so many innocent lives with you. Looks like the gift shop is divided in half based on the two incidents. Ooh. Okay, so the crank gun...
There was a locked door in the gift shop. I think I can open it.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting to it.
Got a lock, needs picking.
Ah, this won't take long at all.
So, the crank gun...
Got it.
Basically, the only place you get it is from those, tin soldiers.
Got a lock here.
Give me a second.
The Patriots.
Done.
The whole place is ransacked. There ain't no shock jockey here.
Slate must have taken them. Look.
You only need a sip. Why not just check if that one bottle still has anything in it? Or just, hell, use your hands. Scoop up some of that puddle.
Is that...
Slate. He's here.
He's also in wherever the control booth is. Not sure what's going on with that. Anyway, I was talking about the crank gun. You only really get it from the Patriots.
What is that?
Comstock ships. He's coming for Slate.
It was Slate who killed for his country at Wounded Knee! It was Slate who stormed the gates at Peking! Slate!
Slate!
Comstock's coming, Booker. But our lives won't satisfy him, oh no. He won't rest until he's turned us into tin. I won't let him. He took my past, but that's all he's getting from me.
Just give us the vigor. We don't need to do this.
Here you go, boys. A soldier's death awaits.
So, the advantage of the crank gun is that it's got a lot of ammunition. It does a hell of a lot of damage.
You're not the Booker DeWitt I remember. Tin Man! Tin Man!
Oh, like that even means anything. But the disadvantage of the, gotcha. But the disadvantage of the crank gun is the fact that you can only get a new one by shooting one of those Patriots. Ah, crap.
Here you go!
Great!
Well, he's going into explode mode. Didn't do too much damage, luckily. Oh, and there's the Patriot. But yeah, so the fact that you run out of ammunition so quickly, and the fact that it's so hard to get replacement ammunition is the reason why the crank gun is not actually a good weapon. That and the fact that you only get two guns, so if either of them is running low on ammunition, you are in serious trouble. Also, this is what happens if you die while she's around. Luckily, your ammunition does get restored a bit, which is good. Also, I believe from now on, the big fire dudes, the firefighters, I think, you can always find a lockpick on their bodies. Ah, damn it. Thank God.
Come on, DeWitt! Show me what you're made of!
Oh, it came in just before I, It's nice that it came in just before the combat ended, too. But let's take a look in these rooms where those guys were coming out from.
My men and I are doomed. Doomed as noble Custer was at Little Bighorn. But we shall not yield to Comstock and his 10 soldiers. But my scout has seen him. Booker DeWitt is coming here to the hall. DeWitt. We called him the White Engine of Wounded Knee for all the grisly trophies he claimed. A man such as he might just grant us the peace we seek.
Yeah. Slate's just gone kinda nuts. Doesn't seem to accept the idea that, you know, living, even though people are lying about you, may not be the worst option ever. Alright, let's clear out the crowd here. And now I'm out of ammunition. Even though I started with like 100. Come on, you bastards. I'm trying not to cross the electrical beams here. Because, yeah, they do cause damage. Getting rid of that damn guy. Good for a moment, not good to keep. But yeah, he's really showing off what you can do with the shock jockey traps. I suppose they might as well advertise it with how much they're basically teasing you with this thing. You get it in the first game, it's not that awesome.
You're not done here, soldier! Eat everything that's on your plate! Finish it!
I'm not going to feed into your stupid delusion, you crazy old man.
You're a tin man now! A tin man!
Not sure if those scars on his face are war wounds or it's because of the shock jockey.
Press to shoot a bolt of electricity. Hold and release to create a shocking trap.
Comstock's men will surely take him.
Do you ever get used to it? The killing.
Faster than you can imagine.
Alright, well, just a quick run back out of here. For some reason I'm not running. I don't know why. Oh, hello there. Wait a second. Yeah, this is basically why these standing pools of water are
You know,
here.
those vigors seem very powerful. I'll do what I can to keep you stocked in salts.
Thanks.
So yeah, those two guys were pretty much a deliberate attempt to show you what the shock jockey can do with standing bodies of water. Sort of similar to what the fire one does with puddles of oil. Did I hear a raven, perchance? I did.
Here!
Nice!
There we go. Yeah, we already knew that, oh, damn it. Assholes.
I can tell what Slate said bothered you. You showed me. Sometimes you have to do what's necessary to survive.
There's survival, and then there's finding pleasure in the act.
Booker.
Look, you seem like a decent enough sort. That said, less you know about me, the better.
Ah, now here we go. Got some options. Of course, they're the same options that we had before, so I really just have to wonder why that one only had, like, the one option, because that was unusual. Here's the other thing Shock Jockey does. There are surprisingly few of those things scattered around. That or I'm just bad at spotting them. Oh well. Questions for another day. Alright. Y'all know what's coming next, so here's the title card. Your topic today is foreign imperialism. Heaven or hell, let's rock. A spectrum of mistreatment. America's history of foreign soil imperialism is, surprisingly, I don't know, milquetoast, compared to what other great powers were doing at the time. I mean, we certainly did plenty of terrible things to Native American tribes as we marched across North America, but it's like we just didn't know what to do when it came to peoples we couldn't simply evict and replace. Maybe it was the influence of a relatively free democracy. Or maybe it's just because we got into the game later than anyone else, but for whatever reason, we just didn't exploit the shit out of our colonies, the way, say, the Netherlands or Belgium did. Now, I'm not saying we have a positive colonial legacy here, but at the same time, we never wiped out entire islands to get a monopoly on nutmeg, and we didn't chop off the hands of workers who didn't meet the rubber quota. Even our legacy of slavery is relatively mild compared to what happened in the Caribbean. I mean, take Hawaii, for example. Hawaii's history is downright anomalous in world history. So, shortly after first contact, most native Hawaiians died thanks to Eurasian diseases, and following the depopulation, white settlers muscled in to build plantations. In 1887, they overthrew the native king, and in 1898, they arranged for the United States to annex the island chain. In fact, the first person to replace the native royal family was Sanford Dole, cousin to James Dole, the man whose name you can find in just about every grocery store's canned fruit section. But so far, that is not actually unique. And what happened next was also not unique. In the grand tradition of white plantation owners, none of them wanted to put in any work, and so what they did instead was they opened the Hawaiian Islands to Asian immigrants. They weren't slaves. American slavery was long over by this point, and it never applied to Filipino and Japanese immigrants in any case, but they were still exploited and marginalized. But then the 14th Amendment happened. As of 1868, 30 years before Hawaii joined the U.S., all persons born on American soil, whether state or territory, are U.S. citizens. And this was deliberately intended to apply to the children of immigrants, not just former slaves. Because of this rule, the kids of exploited Asian immigrants were full citizens. And despite their best efforts, the plantation owners just couldn't manage to pull off Jim Crow-level voting restrictions. Eventually then, the number of workers who could vote outnumbered the number of plantation owners, and following that, they slowly took over the government. Hawaii achieved statehood in 1959 because the workers wanted that extra layer of rights and representation. And perhaps not coincidentally, the biggest industry post-statehood has been tourism, rather than agriculture. On top of that, I believe Hawaii is the only state in the Union which has never had a European American majority. Beyond Hawaii, though, we never really had much in the way of overseas colonies. I know Alaska technically isn't connected, but its story is similar enough to the rest of the continental US. The only way we really got foreign colonies was thanks to the Spanish-American War of 1898, and that's another odd little blip in history. As best as I can figure, it was basically an extension of the Monroe Doctrine, the idea that the United States should protect the Western Hemisphere from European intervention. And mostly we stick with that so that we can intervene instead. Anyway, we didn't like the way that Spain was putting down a rebellion in what was then its colony of Cuba, so we beat them up for 10 weeks and then took what few colonies they had left by that point. The Philippines, Cuba, Guam, and Puerto Rico. The fate of each of these colonies has been about as different as you can get. Well, assuming you stop short of mutilation and genocide, I mean. In the Philippines, we fought and destroyed their native government pretty much as soon as we acquired the islands. And yet by 1935, we were laying out plans for full independence. Of course, then World War II happened, and the Japanese occupied the islands. And let's just say that, from what I understand, Filipinos love criticizing Americans for what we did during our occupation, but their worst insults are always reserved for the Japanese. Cuba actually did gain independence following the Spanish-American War, but it was an independence where America could meddle with the government as much as it liked. Between this and the already rather violent state of Cuban politics, the government tended to be rather unstable until Castro took over in 1959. And so, for the next 56 years, and until very, very recently, the USA and Cuba have not been on speaking terms. I don't think it was the fact that Castro led a bloody rebellion that made us enemies. The United States has been friends with far bloodier regimes. It was the fact that a country we thought of as one of our own cozied up to our worst enemy. As for Puerto Rico and Guam, they're still around. Guam's one of those islands that's basically just a Navy base and a few tourist traps. But Puerto Rico is big enough that we've sort of been wondering what to do with them for decades. Even Puerto Ricans themselves are divided on whether to become a full state, stick with being a Commonwealth territory, or else go for associated independence, which basically means they'd have full sovereignty, but we could still build military bases wherever we like, and would be responsible for their national defense. It's more complicated than that, mind you, but oddly enough, the Puerto Ricans who desire full independence only account for around 2 to 3% of the population. The Boxer Rebellion. I'm gonna have to switch gears here to talk about the Boxer Rebellion. While there were American troops involved, the rebellion and its aftermath was not an American imperial action. The Chinese Boxers were defeated by the 8-nation alliance, and only 3 of those nations were major players. 2 of them were China's big neighbors, Russia and Japan, and the third was the 19th century superpower, Great Britain. The other nations were France, America, Italy, Austria-Hungary, and the German Empire, which had formed very recently at that point. Prussia only managed to get the political clout to absorb its neighbors into a German state thanks to its success in the Franco-Prussian War of 1871. But that's just a detail. Before I tell you about the war that closed out the 19th century, let me give you all some background on how China was doing throughout the 100 years prior. In 2 words, not well. Manchuria is a region in East Asia which basically covers the area between Mongolia, Korea, and the Pacific Ocean. It's still a part of China today, or at least most of it is. In the mid-17th century, back when European nations were still more into trading than conquering foreign nations, aside from Spain, of course, the Manchurians decided that, well, the Mongols had had their fun, so now it was their turn to conquer China. So ended the Ming Dynasty, and so began the Qing Dynasty, which would rule China until, oddly enough, 1912. China has always dominated the East Asian political scene, and so, to no one's surprise, they became a major trading partner with all the European trade companies during the Age of Sail. So much so, in fact, that they damn well addicted the English people to tea, an addiction which, let's face it, lasts to this day. China also sold fine manufactured goods like porcelain dinnerware and silk. But China's a big country, and there wasn't anything they particularly wanted from Europeans, even as European colonies and trade networks grew to cover the whole world. Partly, I think this was a sense of pride. Partly, xenophobia. But I'd say the biggest reason that China never imported anything beyond silver is because the way they kept an iron grip on their peasants was to deny that the outside world and all its strange new ideas even existed. But the British Empire did not like seeing its silver disappear into a bottomless pit, and they weren't about to kick their caffeine habit, so instead they traded one drug for another. Their new colonies in India were producing a whole lot of opium, and even when that stuff isn't refined into morphine or heroin, it is incredibly addicting. Now, humans generally aren't comfortable with intentionally starting disease epidemics, but addictive epidemics, especially if you're the only supplier in town, oh, you'd best believe we'd stoop to that. The spread of opium in China in the 19th century is among the most devastating drug epidemics in world history, up there with the spread of gin in England in the 18th century and the spread of crack cocaine in the United States in the 20th. Quite naturally, the King Emperor did not like seeing China's trade imbalance vanish, nor did he like seeing his subjects turning into a bunch of useless, whacked-out opium addicts. And so began the First Opium War of 1839 to 1842. Unfortunately for China, Britain was already well into the Industrial Revolution by this point, and so despite China's immense army, and its army has always been ridiculously huge, they lost. And they lost hard. 1842 is when Hong Kong first came into British hands. But the trade concessions Britain forced out of China after the war weren't enough, and so in 1856 they began the Second Opium War. With the help of other European powers who were also pushing into China by this point, Britain won again and thoroughly humiliated the Chinese Empire. By the end of the 19th century, foreign powers were treating the Chinese with possibly even more disdain than that which the Chinese elite treated their subjects, which, yeah, was not a very compassionate relationship. The Boxer Rebellion began in northern China thanks to the Society of the Righteous and Harmonious Fists, known as the Boxers to the English and Americans because, at the time, that was basically the only word we used to describe unarmed fighting. The Boxers stood for Ending Foreign Exploitation in China, and they also stood for killing thousands of Chinese Christians, whom they considered to be traitors. The Boxers weren't really a religion, but they did have a superstitious belief in their ability to succeed, so you can at least say that they were a society of last resort. Unlike the Native Americans, however, the Chinese Boxers had the advantage of numbers, although all that really meant was that their last stand wasn't a complete massacre. The imperial court was divided in whether or not to support the Boxers. Some wanted to gamble on the long shot and maybe win back some dignity, but others didn't want to go down with the ship when the foreign powers inevitably ground the peasant revolt into paste. Not that it really helped once the grinding was done. For even allowing the uprising to happen, the Chinese government was forced into even more concessions, including an indemnity equal to a full year's worth of taxes. One particularly notable incident would be the Battle of Peking, which is the name of a city we now translate as Beijing. The Boxers came to the capital city in order to lay siege to the foreign embassies. This included the American embassy, which is why Colombia decided to intervene and lay waste to the people below. Not that the Boxers' actual fate was much better. The battle was so one-sided that the Allied armies were less worried about the enemy and more worried about who would get to rescue the embassies first. And then after the battle came the looting and the pillaging. Oh boy, looting and the pillaging. The American general at least tried to ban looting, though it didn't work. The British followed their stereotype and set up orderly auctions for looted goods and merchandise. Kaiser Wilhelm actively encouraged looting and murdering, urging his troops to show no mercy like the Huns of old. And his speech is what led to the German nickname of Huns during World War I. Notably, the German papers quickly ran a corrected version of the speech, making it an early example of a political gaffe. Personal thoughts. The colonial period is, for the most part, over, although the corporations and governments of developed nations continue to meddle in the affairs of other nations, both underdeveloped and developed. It's not even a case of the strong exploiting the weak. It's everybody getting away with whatever they can. But the thing is, you can't really achieve much through exploitation, not as much as you can achieve through cooperation. You lose out on some individual benefits with cooperation, true, but nevertheless, it remains a fact that multi-cell organisms can accomplish more than single-cell organisms. Pack predators are smarter and more successful than lone predators, and a democracy with fair elections is more successful than a dictatorship, no matter what ideology it follows and no matter how compassionate its leaders are. None of us is as dangerous as all of us. Do you want to know how the social contract really works? Whoever has the power to remove a leader has influence over that leader's decisions. And that influence is directly related to the ease of this removal. Spreading out this influence encourages cooperation. Shrinking it down encourages exploitation. But even in the latter case, there's always somebody who can pull the strings. Someone the leader has to trust to not simply shoot him or her in the head and take over. Individuals can't change the world. Leaders need followers who will spread their ideas and enforce their decisions on possibly unwilling subjects. With more cooperation comes more followers, and possibly more subjects. And with them comes the ability to do more, to change more, to move faster and farther than any one of us could possibly manage on our own. And that's why cooperation is more powerful than exploitation, no matter how tempting the latter option is. And that is why democracy is more powerful than a dictatorship. And here's the funny part. Everybody already knows that what I'm saying is true. We just don't realize it sometimes. Thanks to Michael Nightingale for helping me compose this lecture, and thanks to you for joining me again in History Corner. And I promise that next week's corner will be more uplifting. So I hope I'll see you then.